As I said, he practiced personal injury law here in Pinellas County. He worked for a large firm for several years. And then in 2015, he opened his own practice here in Seminole. His practice primarily, again, doing plaintiff's work, personal injury law, representing people who had been injured in car wrecks. So I guess he would be classified as what people call a car wreck lawyer. In early October of last year, early October of 2022, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office received a complaint from a person who had been represented by Reynolds in a car wreck case. She had been injured in a car accident, and she had retained him in 2020. So after the woman retained him in 2020, Reynolds did what car wreck lawyers do, and she was referred by Reynolds to a medical provider, a doctor, under what's called a letter of protection. And Reynolds then, after he does the client intake and gets her out to a treating physician, chiropractor, doctor, whoever under this letter of protection, then he puts together a demand package and makes a financial demand of the insurance company of the at-fault driver. Now, what personal injury lawyers do is refer people to doctors with whom they, the personal injury lawyers, have a relationship, and the doctors treat these people under this letter of protection, which in essence means they're treating them, but they're not getting paid until the lawyer settles the case or the case gets resolved through trial. The lawyer then negotiates the medical bills with the doctor based on the settlement amount in the case. Then what happens is the lawyer gets paid, the doctor gets paid, and the injured person gets compensated for their injuries. So the person we received the initial complaint from treated with the doctors and communicated with Reynolds from, as I said, 2020 through mid-2022. Now, in that period of time, two years is not an unusual period of time for litigation and to resolve a car wreck case. During their communications, Reynolds told the person that her case was pending, that he was negotiating a settlement with the insurance company, and then all of a sudden, Reynolds abruptly stopped communicating with her. So the woman, obviously concerned, didn't have any more contact with her lawyer. The case was supposed to be at a stage of being resolved, so she contacted the insurance company herself in about October of 2022, and she learned that the insurance company had settled her case with Reynolds back in March of 2022 for $100,000. So at that point is when she made the complaint to us. So again, throughout early 2022, after Reynolds had received and pocketed the woman's $100,000, he continually lied to her in the communications before those communications abruptly stopped, that he was ongoing trying to resolve this with the insurance company. He also forged the woman's name on settlement documents, and he never paid her medical bills with the settlement money. So the woman then reported the theft, and we began the criminal investigation. We also learned from the Florida Bar that it had received complaints about Reynolds, and the bar was conducting an investigation into systemic theft of monies by Reynolds. So what we found out during the course of this criminal investigation between October 2022 and this month, that there were 16 people who have come forward who retained Reynolds as their lawyer in personal injury cases that go back as far as 2019. Where he did what he did to the first victim. He agreed to represent them in a personal injury case. He referred them to doctors. He sent monetary demand packages to insurance companies, forged clients' names on settlement documents, and pocketed all the settlement money, leaving these people with no compensation for their injuries and holding the bag for all of their medical bills. So we identified that Reynolds stole over $850,000 in client money from 16 people. So this represents the people we've identified so far and the amount of money that Reynolds, close to $850,000 that Reynolds has stolen. So in addition to all these people losing their money to compensate them for their injuries, they are now, on top of all this, personally responsible for the medical bills, and that totals hundreds of thousands of dollars additionally that they're on the hook for. In fact, one of the victims already has a lien against her from one of the medical providers. In December of 22, the Florida Bar, actually the Florida Supreme Court, issued an emergency suspension order of Reynolds' license to practice law in Florida. So he hasn't been practicing since December. Through the investigation, detectives learned that Reynolds has a drug problem. It's believed that a portion of the stolen money was used to buy drugs. Also, detectives have reviewed his financial records and subpoenaed his bank records and other documents and show that he spent a lot of money on pornography and prostitutes. His bank records show he spent over $30,000 on the website OnlyFans, over $26,000 on an anonymous billing site called Bill, almost $400,000 on PayPal, and over $24,000 on Uber. So Reynolds was arrested this morning. He's charged with multiple counts of grand theft and money laundering. He's booked into the county jail. Several of the charges that he faces are first-degree felony charges that face a maximum statutory penalty of 30 years in state prison. Based on this, we strongly believe that there are additional victims who have not come forward. We ask that anybody who was victimized by Reynolds, and you can see a big difference between his lawyer picture and his booking photo from today. Anybody who was victimized by him is not reported. Please come forward, contact Detective Cindy Cacolo in our economic crime section, and we'll take the complaint and investigate the case. So this is a situation where you got somebody who's supposed to help people who's sticking it to them and stealing their money. And these people are not only out the settlement money for compensation for pain, suffering, damages that happen as a result of car wrecks, but again, their medical bills never got paid, and now they're on the hook for the medical bills. So it's just really a terrible situation for somebody that's supposed to be protecting and helping to victimize his clients.
What's your response been to obviously being arrested and you guys finding out that he's done this to at least 16 people in our community?
What's his reaction?
He hasn't been cooperative.
He lawyered up. Go figure. Yeah.
Sheriff, you said he worked with a doctor on this, and the doctor never reported that he never got any money from him?
One of them did.
One of them did?
Yeah.
He worked with several doctors.
Yeah. It's very common for personal injury lawyers and car wreck lawyers to work with the doctors, work with providers. People come in, they refer them to them, and that's why they do this letter of protection, because they have this arrangement. And the arrangement is that they refer them to the doctor charges a certain price, and then they reduce that price and they negotiate it based upon the settlement amount. So this is just the way the system works. And one of the doctors had reported, I think you can find it out there, publicly on the as a basis of the Florida Bar investigation on that. But so yeah, one of them did, and other doctors also, of course, haven't been paid either. So.
Do you know how many doctors he's worked with?
I don't know how many. It's very common that there's several. Depends upon. I mean, he had a pretty decent thing going.
To Trevor's point, do you believe there are any other people who may be involved in these crimes or any other suspects?
We don't have any information to that effect. It appears that he was sole practitioner. You can see from the office that he had there on Seminole Boulevard, pretty small place, kind of drive up. He was meeting a lot of his clients in bars, other places like that, but there's no indication of it. And lawyers are required to have what's called an IOTA, interest on trust account, interest-bearing trust account. And so he was taking the money into his Florida Bar required IOTA account and then just transferring it out into a personal account with the same bank. So it looks like he was doing all this himself, and then you can see from these expenditures, we got the information that he had a drug problem, but, when you're spending, $30,000 on OnlyFans and $24,000 on Uber and $400,000 to PayPal, and, he's spending a lot of money. So he probably didn't need any help spending it.
You mentioned the Florida Bar had seen just the already systemic victims here. Had victims come forward to the Florida Bar first? Did they come forward to you first? So how was the process of finding out how many people were involved?
It was all about the same time. I think that the bar had received complaints, I believe, before we did, but it was pretty contemporaneous. So it was all around October of last year. But I think the bar got some complaints before we did.
Any advice, any at all that you can give to people when trying to choose a lawyer for certain cases?
You know, it's really hard because, you know, people want to have, you know, confidence in lawyers, legal professionals that are out there trying to supposedly help people, trying to right wrongs, trying to guide them through the process. It's like going to a doctor. It's like going to anybody else, is that, you know, you think that the person is there and, you know, they're licensed to practice law, they've got the boxes checked, they've got the credentials, they've got the credibility that goes with that, and they're really just a thief who is ripping them off. When you look at some of these people, and they range in age. I mean, some were very young and some were very old. You know, elderly folks that got ripped off by this guy. And it's terrible. And some of the individual amounts you can see on here are not, you know, insignificant. I think one of them was $148,000. You got a whole bunch. And so as far as, and what that tells you is that in car wreck world is that, I mean, really, and we see this, I mean, we litigate car wrecks all the time because we have a bunch of cars on the street and we get involved in car wrecks. But most of the car wrecks, you know, are going to settle $15,000, $20,000. You start seeing these settlements up here in the $150,000 range. What that tells you is that those people were hurt. Those people had some injuries. Those people had some damages. And again, they're out what they should be compensated for. And on top of it, now they got to deal with the medical bills. And that's just terrible, especially when this one person already has a lien against them, et cetera. Yeah.
There's no way for them to recoup anything? They're like victims again, basically?
Yeah, they are. Well, you know, I'm sure that he'll be ordered to pay restitution as a result of the criminal case, but, you know, that'll take time and go through a process. And of course, you know, based on this, and you know, we'll see what the criminal justice system work, and you know, hopefully he does some state prison time, which will then, you know, delay restitution that they'd get. But that's really the only recourse, is to get restitution from him.
How often do we see cases like this in Pinellas County?
Thankfully, not very often. I mean, this is really a rarity. This is not what lawyers do, and this is, you know, an anomaly situation. We don't see this very often, thankfully.
How long have you been practicing?
So he graduated law school, I think I said in 2006. Let me tell you again. Got it here. Yeah, 2006 is when he graduated, and he worked for a large personal injury firm here in Pinellas County, and he worked there until he opened his own practice in 2015. So he's been out practicing for a while, and again, you know, he had his own practice, you know, and he first started intaking these clients that he was ripping off in 2019. So it wasn't that long after he opened up his own practice that he started representing these people that he was ripping off. And again, it takes time for these, and you can see with some of them, like the one I just explained to you where the woman that first came forward, is, you know, the case had been going on for a couple of years. And so he pocketed her $100,000 back last March. She didn't realize it until October, when he stopped communicating, and then she calls the insurance company and they say, no, we paid you $100,000, and she's, I didn't get anything. Well, there you go.
Is there any one particular victim that stands out as just more heinous than any others that he victimized?
No, they're all bad. They're all bad. You know, it's all a bad situation for everybody. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, I think that what we're going to see, I mean, just because of these, and some have just come in the last couple of weeks. There's more people out there. I don't know what the total dollar amount will end up being, but, you know, it's significant, and I'm sure that as a result of this coming out today, that more people are going to come forward.
Will you like go back on all his records of all the clients that he's had and reach out to them to see if they got paid? Or
Well, we don't have access to all those records going back. You know, we wouldn't know unless people come forward to us. So they need to come forward to us, and then of course we'll fully investigate it.
For the victims, I see they have pictures of the male or female, so 12 females and 1 male.
I think that's right. Yeah. All right, thanks everybody. Go ahead.
Sure.
All right, thanks. Yeah.